buckets, no muffin tops, and no peas. So when we're visualizing this, normally we just kind of simplify it to the basic details, and it doesn't come out looking realistic. You need to make sure that you are showing exactly what you see, not what you think it is. So if you're looking at the image, that bowl is round. That needs to be represented. And the opening needs to be a long oval shape, not a muffin top. So keep this in mind when you enlarge your drawing. I am going to start off with the bowl first, kind of gauging the scale that I need it to be in. You can take it into the portrait view, but just know that it's going to be large, so it might crop off your grapes a little bit if you go in that orientation. So I like to do it in landscape, so I have more than enough room for the bowl and the grapes. Going to start off with the bowl, the top of it, and I start off with a horizontal line, but this is going to be curved in a little bit. I'm just making sure that I get in my semicircle shape. So if I turn this sideways, you should be able to see that you can complete this into a full circle. That's how round this bowl shape is. Now I'm going to correct that straight line and make it look a little more curved. So I'm going to slightly curve it under on the front of the bowl and make sure I curve the back of the bowl in an upward formation and curving those corners. You don't want pinched corners, they're rounded off. Seems silly, but count your grapes. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 grapes, not including the ones that are hidden and those baby grapes up above. Pay attention to the first 3. That one in the middle goes a little bit beyond halfway. The one to the far right is right on the edge of the right side of that bowl. So I'm finding my halfway. The last 2 grapes are going to end where I've placed that mark. And I'm going to loosely place in some large oval shapes representing the first 3 grapes that you see in the very front of that bowl. Some are horizontal, some are diagonal. Check your angles. I'm going to place in these 2 that's kind of pushed in on the side. And I keep light sketches, I keep it loose. So kind of pushing and pulling, making sure things are at the right angle. They're at the right height, the width, making sure that they're not long and skinny. They need to be kind of plump. Going to place in this top one that looks like it's floating a little, and then I will just correct my shapes. You can do this over and over again until you're happy with it. And I'm placing in, well, I want to make that one a little bit more plump, and I'm going to place in my little baby grapes that I see here on the very top. So this doesn't have to be exact. You can correct and make sure things look as close as possible, but as long as they're a good size and shape, you should be good. I'm going to continue the counting with this to make sure that I have the grape or the amount of grapes that I need. And you can just adjust and readjust and check your angles for these as you place them in. I work with one that seems easiest to place in, and then I can connect the other grapes that are against it or touching it a lot easier, checking my angles, seeing where it's placed. Is it a little bit above? Is it a little bit below? Those conversations you have with yourself to talk about relationships and measurements and scale still applies with this. So you don't always have to use a crosshair or a grid line on top of your image or drawing, but you can still have that talk, that internal dialogue with yourself about relationships and scale and placement. So erase the lines you don't need, and the last thing I need to do is go ahead and place in my stem for my grape. I like to start off with a basic line shape first, and then you can thicken this up, making sure that the angles are here, making sure that it's connecting to the proper grape it's meant to be attached to. And then once you get that line shape in, you can kind of thicken that line work out a bit. This paper is going to act as my test sheet because I placed some pastel there by mistake. So yes, before I start, I want to say, I'm picking out my colors right now, but I want to say I do not finish this tutorial all the way. It gets to where you can see the grapes get painted through, and I place in the base color for my bowl. What you won't see is my background and me glazing my bowl to make it darker. So I mean, this is 30 minutes long. It's really showing you how to put the grapes in, because I think that's going to be the most time-consuming part. Being patient and waiting for it to dry, picking the correct colors that you want. You can use your color reference chart like I'm doing to select which one you're going to use. And each grape is slightly different, but if they all look kind of close in color, that's fine, as long as you're showing your shadows, your highlights, your transparencies and things like that. When you get towards the end, or let me say, for all of this, just make sure that you are being patient, letting things dry. If you're working from home, you might want to have a blow dryer so you can dry your paper. Just a fair warning for you, if you do that, do not blow dry your paper if it's full of puddles, okay? Just take your time. I feel like it might be better for you to bounce around like we've done in the chart and place colors, allowing them to dry before you put color on top of it or against it to avoid any type of bleeding issues. So because this is my test sheet, I can place down whatever colors I want until I decide which one will work best for my actual grape bowl drawing. So I'm going to mix different types of greens and play around with this one to see what colors I like the best. And make sure you're not painting everything all together. Remember that you have to kind of bounce around your page. So I've got one grape colored in. I'm going to make sure this next one gets painted away from that area, so that way those two colors don't bleed together. You have to do that. You have to have that patience. So leave open spaces in between each area that you're placing down your color. Give it time to dry, so that way when you are ready to paint up against it or on top of it, you don't have any issues with bleeding your colors through. So I'm pointing out colors, but I'm not even following through how I should. I'm actually not really committing to my chart a lot of the time, and I'm experimenting and mixing my own greens that you may not see on the chart, which is fine if you do that too. Just make sure that you don't place that into your final right away. Obviously, I keep saying it's really important to have your test sheet so you can test out dabs of color, spots of color against one another, and see which one works out for you, which ones just look a little crazy. And I will eventually use a blow dryer for this so I can move on a little bit quicker, so I can finally decide what I'm going to place in for my final. Just take your time. Don't feel like you have to rush to get into the major project. Make sure that you have the exact mixes that you want to move forward. So now that it's dry, I can also play around with some glazing techniques. And I can use slightly different greens on top of what I've got, or I can use the same green for a particular grape to see what happens with my glazes and if it will give me the shadows I'm trying to achieve. Okay, so I think I know where I'm going with this. I've spent maybe like 7 minutes or so on this, and I don't want to overwork this and lose time on my actual project. I know where I'm going with the grapes. If I need to go back to my test sheet for my bowl and my background, I definitely can, so I won't throw that away. I'm going to go ahead and incorporate most of my greens because I actually liked all of them together. They kind of gave it an interesting look. If you actually look in the picture, you'll see that a lot of those grapes have a slightly off green from or in comparison to one another. So yeah, you'll see that a lot of these grapes are going to turn different colors, but in the end they'll all look like they're meant to be. And I almost forgot, before I start painting my final, I need to go in with an eraser again to lighten it up so that way when I put my watercolor on top, that pencil does not show through it. So you need to do the same. So unfortunately right now you can't see much of my drawing. It's dark enough for me to see and light enough for me to apply my color so it does not show through. I won't talk much through this part. I'm just going to let it play out because you've already seen kind of this process in my test paper. I'm just going to be bouncing around, placing down a base coat for my grapes. I will dry them and then I will begin to place in some shadows and glazes on top to make it more rich and formed with value. So make sure you have your color chart and the reference photo in front of you at all times so you can see your colors that you need to try to achieve. They may not look exact. I know when I finish mine, it's not going to look exactly like the photo, but it at least helps you determine when to change the color of a grape. So if you're looking at the reference photo, I'm sorry you can't see it in the video, you can find it in the PowerPoint, you will see that some of these are a little more of a cool green. Some of them have a little bit of warmth to it by having that orangey, yellowish kind of tone. So I'm trying to achieve that in these. There's some that are a nice true green. There's other ones that are a little bit more yellow. There's some that might look a little bit more grayed down or even blue. And I'm trying to push and pull to make sure I represent that. I can apply more layers to my grapes, but I'm taking a moment to find any shadow areas that I want to show. Um, so I have a couple of different colors in my tray that's helping me achieve that. I mixed a darker green for the darkest shadows. And then anywhere else that you see me placing color, it might be that I'm just glazing it with the same color that I used for that grape originally. So I apologize that you cannot see my mixing tray that has all of my greens, but I know it looks like I have like dozens of green shades from my tray. I really don't. I may have, I want to say 4 or 5 different colors, and I've tried my best to reference my color chart here. There are some greens that I made up on my own, but what you see on my paper is not a dozen greens, I promise you. It just appears that way because I've been patient, letting each layer dry and glazing on top of it. And the highlights that I intentionally left in, along with the 4 or 5 different greens that I've got, and the glazing that occurs, the layering of the same green or similar types of green on top of one another is helping me achieve that dimension and form. So I hope you're not looking at this thinking I have like 24 different greens on here. I promise you I don't. It's just me layering, letting it dry, glazing those different greens or the same greens repeatedly until I get that translucent appearance to these grapes and giving it that 3D form. So I feel like I'm almost done with this, but you really see it takes a lot of patience. I'm probably being much of an overachiever right now. You see, okay, so you can see my tray finally. So I want you to understand, I'm not using a million greens. I'm using 4 or 5 different greens, layering them on top of one another, or I'm using the same green over and over on one grape, for example, just to get that glaze and that shading to come through. Yours may not be as detailed. As long as you're showing me that you understand how to place your shadow underneath, moving in to that slow transition of medium values to your light values to some type of highlight, you will be fine, okay? I will totally understand if you don't have your grapes look different in various colors. As long as you show me that you understand shading, they all have a uniform look to it with the colors that you choose, it will still look beautiful. Just have fun with it. Okay, so I felt like I was going to eventually work these grapes uh, into overdrive, into overkill. So I'm going to move into the bowl. And remember, I said that the video does not show it complete, but you can at least see me choose my color. I feel like that bowl is a really, really dark navy blue, so I'm going to try and achieve that by placing down a whole bunch of blue, a whole bunch of blue. And remember I said the larger the area, the more paint you need. Whatever color you choose, make sure that you mix enough so that you can cover that whole space. Otherwise, if you run out, you're going to have to remember how much color and what ratio of color you use to achieve that. So I'm using my test sheet to check my color, make sure it's the blue that I want. I realized later that I made it a little too light. I probably should have stuck with the first color, but I just thought it was too black at first. But once I placed it in, I'm going to see that it's a little too light, which is fine. It's not going to be seen on camera because I did not complete the full look to this. But what I will have to do is let it dry, or you could blow dry it and then glaze on top of it a few more times until you achieve that dark color that you want. You can do it that way, or to save your time and to help not stress out your paper so much, you could blow dry this or let it dry and then darken that color that you have in your tray back down to something that might work a little bit better, and then glaze it. So that way you're not glazing it like 4 or 5 times. Maybe you only need to coat another color on top of it, maybe 1 or 2 more times. You don't have to, but I wanted to see if I can show the reflection in the bowl. Um, so place like a slightly darker green there off to the left. I'm going to finish coating this in blue, and then just pay attention to see what I do to make sure that green reflection still shines through. Before that, you'll actually see me address the left side of the bowl, and I lose that reflective or that highlight on the left lip, and I try and place it in. So just be careful with your own and make sure if there's anything that needs to stay white, you avoid it. And as far as the reflection of the grapes on the right side goes, you do not have to place it in. Just watch how I achieve it, and if you want to try it, you can, but it's not required. The video is going to end soon. I don't get to show you the background, nor do I get to show you how to address the blue bowl, making it darker. Just know that you need to be patient, letting it dry, layering it to achieve the colors that you want. And I hope that you challenge yourself to complete it through all the way with your shadows and your highlights in your bowl and whatever color you've determined to use for your background. And I hope you have fun.